You're listening to Online Pet Health Podcasts with Dr. Megan Kelly. Continuing education for veterinarian rehabilitation therapists. Learn more at onlinepethealth.com.
Hey Vet Rehabbers, well, welcome to my first podcast of 2023. I hope you all had an amazing festive season with your family and friends. Today's podcast is with Nadia from Merwe, and it's one of my Behind the Vet Rehab Practice podcasts. This is where we learn from vet rehabbers from all over the world how they practice vet rehab. They share their challenges, their wins and losses in the hope that we can learn from their mistakes so we don't make the same ones that they did. They also share their tips and advice on how they navigate through this crazy world we live in today, and we get a glimpse into their vet rehab life. Now, Nadia is a vet physio based in Durban here in South Africa. Nadia shares with me how she transitioned from studying to having her own practice, what her challenges were, and she shares with me the benefits of taking a sabbatical year and doing something completely different. That's right, she went yachting. So I love this chat with Nadia. If you own your own practice, I have a great download for you. It's called 12 Free Ways to Market Your Vet Rehab Practice. You can go to onlinepethealth.com/12 free ways. So it's 12 as in the numbers, free ways. So over to Nadia. Hey Nadia, thank you so much for joining me.
Hi Megan, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here today.
Me too. I'm looking forward to chatting with you, Nadia. And for the listeners out there, won't you tell them how you got into the field of veterinary physiotherapy?
Well, Meg, first of all, I was actually already in PLET. In 2011, I was actually doing my instructors in horse riding and stud management, and it was for a year. That's actually where I met Nadia. There was just this one day at the end of this course, I really wanted to go overseas and ride and compete. That never happened for me, but I had to make a decision on what I wanted to do, and I really wanted to work with horses. Actually, equine librium actually came to the place where I was studying at that time, and that's how I actually got introduced to of veterinary physiotherapy, of it still in the beginning phases. And that made me want to go and do some more research further, and me wanting to pursue a career in physiotherapy.
Wow, I didn't know that. So Nadia, you were actually doing another course there before, and then obviously Equilibrium started. Yeah, so Equilibrium was a 4-year course, right?
At that time, it was a 3-year course during that time, but as things have progressed, it became a 4-year course.
Okay, all right. And then once you'd finished and you'd qualified, what did you do then?
After I qualified, I actually ended up moving back to Durban, and I actually had the opportunity to work for Equine Librium within Natal, within Ballito and the surrounding areas. So I ended up working for them, and it was a really great experience.
And so you were employed for how many years?
So I worked with Equine Librium for at least almost a year during that time. During that time, I was also, because I was already in Durban and I came from Durban, I wanted to broaden my areas of where I wanted to work. And my heart was already within the garden route itself. But during those times, there wasn't a specific work opportunity for me during that time. So I stayed with them, and then it made me decide to go to Johannesburg, because other opportunities that I wanted to try was also not available in Cape Town when I tried. So the only other option that I was left with was to go to Johannesburg. And when I left for Joburg, I decided to go out on my own.
Okay, and obviously Joburg's a good area because it's very horsey, right? And most of the highly competitive riders are there. So was that something that spurred you on to say, okay, well, because coming from Natal too, I also grew up in Durban. Joburg's obviously completely different to live in.
Absolutely. Originally, I was born in Joburg and I was raised and I grew up there, and then we moved to Natal. So I already had a horse community that I could fall back onto, and previous trainers and competitors that I already have known over the years. So I was quite excited to try this new venture, to move to Joburg and be on my own and be in the hustle and the bustle, because also, again, the majority of the horses and the competitors are within that area.
Yeah. So what was it like going from, obviously, it's such a big transition from the time that you finished studying to when you go out? And I mean, for some of us, we just go straight into owning our own practices and going out on our own. What was the difference for you going from employed straight to then when you went to Joburg, when you started out on your own? Was it a bit of a shock to you, or had you learned quite a lot in that year at Equilibrium that you were able to use in starting your own practice?
Actually, that whole year that I was with Equilibrium, I actually benefited a lot because we were placed already in Durban. We didn't have a base. So we were still in the beginning processes. So we had help from Dr. Tom that helped us to go and be introduced in the surrounding areas in the beginning to potential clients and to start building up the clientele base. So in that setting, we already had to, on our own, try and make ways to try and find clients, be at the show competitions, be involved, and to really put ourselves out there and try and build the clientele base. So in that regard, when I moved to Joburg, I've already had that ready inclined for me to go and try and, to chase the client or to try and make myself available. But yes, when I first got there to Joburg, it was really hard on my own because from the support that you had from a company that you worked for, you had the office environment that helped you with the invoicing and, getting hold of the client, making sure that your invoices were being paid. You had financial support from the company. You also had the supply of all your machines as well, starting out. So, which was another thing I had to, at my expense, get my own machines when I was in Joburg. So, which I had to take a loan out for that as well. No, it was really a big adjustment. I'm going from being employed to being on your own, and also that support base, having the college and having your fellow veterinary physiotherapists. Even though everyone was in different areas, we were all able to always work together, regardless where we were. But even though I was on my own, I was always able to reach back, wherever if there was a moment where I was stuck with something, help was always around the corner.
Yeah, well, that's great. Yeah, I mean, it is such a big difference. I mean, and I can speak from experience of being a vet. So working for practices as a veterinarian and then having my own practice, you suddenly have a new respect for the practice owners, right? So like, I remember like things like questioning why can't we have that drug and why don't we have this, and then you suddenly realize, well, because you have to pay for it, and then it has to, if you don't use it and it sits on the shelf, then that's eating up into your cash flow, and then it could expire, and then they're going to lose money. And so these are all the things that when I was employed I never ever thought about. So I think it's great to actually have the experience of being in both. And I think that a lot of vet rehabbers don't have the luxury of being employed, because there aren't many companies that are employing vet rehabbers. You might, find a vet rehabber who's expanding their practice, and there might be like small practices with maybe 2 vet rehabbers or 2 or 3. But I think for the majority of vet rehabbers, once they qualify, they have to just go out there and start on their own. That's their only option. Maybe 1 or 2 might get lucky and get employed. And I would always say, if you have the opportunity to be employed, that would be my first thing that I would do, because you have that support, and you can really just focus on your clinical skills and treating and not have to worry about all the other things about running a practice. So what did you find, apart from the things that you've mentioned, what was your biggest challenge? Like, what is the thing that, when you went into on your own, that you found the hardest?
Well, being on my own, that I found the hardest was having time, in the sense where starting out when you needed to see clients already, that was already a lot stressful, because you stressing about things that you need to pay, and then you're trying to get out there to get clients, and there hasn't getting into flow of things to engaging with your first client. The wait for me was quite a challenging part to deal with, as well as getting all my machines ready in time. And also, I think the hardest part was also being on my own. I felt it was scary at times, even though leaving from being self-employed, there was also moments of self-doubt. Also, if I was going to make it within this field as well. So there was a lot of self-doubt that came with that. But most challenging for me, I think, was just also believing in myself and knowing that this is something that I can do.
Yeah, and I think for some reason when you don't have that like group or team behind you, that self-doubt when you're on your own really, really creeps in, right? And you'll just have maybe one day where like your bookings are increasing slightly and you're thinking like, okay, it's going okay. And then suddenly you look at your book and then this week there are like no bookings and you've got one day where you don't have a client. And then you think, oh my gosh, it was just luck the last 2 weeks where it's been improving, and you start to then think, oh, why is nobody phoning me? Like, why is my phone not ringing? Why are there no more appointments? And the self-doubt. I mean, I used to have that all the time. And then, you'd have a quiet week and the next week would pick up again. And you have your ups and downs. So I completely hear you with that. Yeah. And then the time thing, I mean, you hit the nail on the head with that, because suddenly you have to make time to do all those things which the team was doing, right, when you're employed. So the invoicing and all of that. But I suppose there are benefits to being employed, and then there are benefits to having your own business too. I know that you also, when you were up in Joburg, you also did some locuming, right, as a vet physio. How did that come about, and how did you find that sort of integrating your own business together with sort of working different hours for somebody else?
Yes, so as I moved to Joburg and seeing that things were taking a bit of time, I had to make another plan. But I first started off at working at a veterinary hospital in Pretoria as their in-hospital veterinary physiotherapist. I stayed with them for a while, but as discussed with them, I was still able to do my own business on the side, which I then did over the weekends. So I stayed with them for a period of a year as well. And then but it was so far away from where I lived that I had to make a decision to either move there or make a plan to find a different solution. I didn't want to move away from the hub of Kyalami in the Joburg region, so I ended up deciding to rather find an ulterior situation that will be closer to home. Then I had the opportunity. I found a advertisement that was being done by Ramsey Rehab in Rivonia, and she is very close to where I was living, and I made contact with her. And that's actually how my introduction also with the locuming actually really started. I started with her a little bit more long-term, same that I did with my veterinary practice, with the veterinary practice in Pretoria, but I was still doing horses on the side, and then I was with her part-time. And then as time went on, my situation changed and I started getting more busy on the horse side of things, whereas I needed to downscale my work on the small animal with Ramsey Rehab. So then I came onto more of a locum time, which really complemented the way that I worked.
Yeah, so how did you do it? Did you do like certain days where you worked at Ramsey Rehab and then other days that you did your practice? Because I mean, I remember for me when I was doing small animals and horses, the challenge always was like you were never on time when you did the horses. Like you would go there and then you can't catch the horse. And, so what you think is going to take an hour takes an hour and a half. And then I would always get stressed because then I knew that I had a 2:00 patient at my small animal practice. And then I was like, I can't actually treat this horse now. And I'd driven all the way out to go and treat it. So what I did actually in the end was just said, okay, well, I can't treat horses and small animals in the same day. I can treat horses one day and small animals another day. So how did you make that work?
Well, first of all, there were different scenarios at different times. But in the beginning, I first started off with doing half day. And then the rest of the half day, I would do some horses. But then it also, as you mentioned, it started getting a little bit tricky with traffic and everything like that. So we decided on certain days. So I would work 3 days of the week at Ramsey Rehab. And then the other days, I would then do my equine therapy treatments. And it also comes down to communication with my locum, with Ramsey Rehab that I was locuming with. And because you're working with two different schedules now, you're working with your schedule, you're working with their schedule. So communication was very important, and just being very planned ahead.
I mean, financially, it must have been really, really nice to have that locum work because you knew that that was income that you were definitely going to get. Did you ever feel though that by locuming you maybe decreased the growth of the equine practice because you weren't available a little bit more?
Look, there were times where I was at Ramsey for a certain day, and all of a sudden, out of the blue, there would be this big horse show happening, and I'd be working until 5, and then I still had all these other horses to see. So there were times when I thought, sure, how can I fit in everything in one day? But you just make it happen, because it wasn't happening like that every single day. If anything, I really felt that it actually challenged me. It also made me grow in different ways that I wouldn't on a normal day. And also having that locuming rate was a blessing for me, because as mentioned, then I knew what I was getting out of those locuming times that I was doing. So I could then plan my month ahead. I had a more feeling of safety and security within my own financial means and what I can do and what I can't do. So both just worked out so well for me, and having both together, I grew within my own business, but also locuming and being part of a different team. I learned so much in that environment as well.
Oh, great. So, I mean, it sounds to me like that was actually an ideal situation for you.
Yes. No, it was definitely very ideal for me. Also then, because I was living in Durban, I was also expanding myself a little bit wider. So I was traveling between Joburg and Durban. So with that, for all the big horse shows, which meant over the weekends, I would have to be away for a week, which also meant the locuming hours times also had to be adjusted throughout. But again, it worked out very well as long as there was good planning behind it and a lot of just ahead of time notice. It really worked well.
And then while you were locuming for Ramsey Rehab, did you ever have any small animal clients that you went to houses, or was the deal with Ramsey Rehab and you that you only saw horses?
Yes, so that was very important because I was with the small animal practice with Ramsey Rehab, and as discussed priorly, I was only treating horses that was outside of Ramsey Rehab, and small animals I was only doing on the premises of Ramsey Rehab, unless I went with Candice to a call out that was managed by her and overseen by her. Then I was able to treat as well. But all small animals remained with Ramsey, yes.
Yeah, because I think if you'd done small animals too, there would have been a bit of conflict there. So that sounded like it worked really well. So fast track now to this last year now. I know that you've done something which I think a lot of us would be dying to do. And, when I chatted to you about, and we're going to reveal it now, what you did, I wanted to ask sort of how it was and what made you decide that. So basically what Nadia did is she decided to take a sabbatical year, which is something which all of us have thought about, I'm sure, and just take a year off, not actually doing vet physio anymore. So how did that come about?
Yeah, Meg, this has been, it was quite the sabbatical. So how it actually all came about, it all kind of has progressed since COVID hit. And I know that a lot of businesses and solo vet physios out there have really struggled with. That was kind of the start of how things were going. Also with, being solo, COVID hit and, petrol prices were increasing. Clients weren't always prepared to pay, the increased petrol fee that you were adding to your bill. But then again, as the person that I was asking some patients I really had to see, and my older clients, I would, keep the rate the same. And it was such a tug of war between all those things where as time went on, I was struggling very much financially, and with my clients themselves, I started losing some patience in that regard. But also, again, I was doing myself in by not adjusting to how the economy was adjusting itself as well. So that also came back to me in that way. I also had a little bit of a traumatic event that also happened here in Natal. We had some riots that happened here, and I just had some things that happened in my life where I lost a little bit of faith in myself. I lost the drive of being in my own business. I was just going through quite a bit of a few things that I actually decided that I couldn't do this anymore. I was exhausted. I was tired. The relentless hours that we put in, as mentioned before, the challenges. I wasn't even excited to see my own dogs anymore. And I mean, that to me was a big call, a big red flag. And then I finally came down to the decision that the COVID was coming to the point where, the borders were opening up again. And since I was very young, I've always wanted to try and do more traveling. And I've been in a financial situation. I have so many things that I had to repay, and I just didn't know what to do. And me deciding to go and do the yachts finally became a reality. So I decided to close my doors. I was able to refer my clients to fellow vet rehabbers out there that I have kept close in communication with. And that is also just amazing how the community is out there, that I was able to refer my patients to them. And then I made the decision to close my doors and go and join a new adventure on the yachts.
I mean, it sounds to me like you had burnout, complete burnout, like compassion fatigue. And I think it's something that we all go through at some time. I mean, I've had a very similar situation. I remember the time when I knew there was something not right with me. I remember this is actually when I was in veterinary, and I remember the receptionist said to me, there's a dog and he had something wrong with his ears and he was screaming in pain. And, normally my thought process would be like, oh yeah, just bring him straight down. Like, let me help him. And I was like, okay, like, let him come, and my thought was a little bit of irritation. So I was irritated with the dog, irritated with the dog for having an ear infection when I wanted to go home, And I remember like afterwards, like, catching myself thinking like, what was that? Like, why were you so irritated, like with the dog, And the dog came and I was just like, oh, like, this is the last thing I need on a Friday afternoon or whenever it was. It was like my last consult and I had to wait. And, I remember just saying, there's something not right here. This is not you, for me, I would do anything for an animal whenever, especially one that was in discomfort and pain. And so, I mean, the good thing really is that you caught it, you realized something's not right here with me, and it did sound to me like, as you were explaining now about, working, locuming, then after 5 o'clock, seeing horses, weekends, traveling, it did sound to me like you were burning the candle at both ends. So what's really good is that you identified that there was something not right and you did something about it. So you went off to the yachts for a year. What was that like?
It wasn't easy either, because I directly went to France, and what happens there is that you don't generally always arrive with a job prospect. You sometimes have to land there and try and find work there. I did find work, and I found work on a yacht that was only French crew. So I was the only English. Everyone could speak English, but I was the only South African among French nationality. It was really hard. It was really difficult, but I really learned a lot about myself. You live in a very confined space with 6 people. You breathe, eat, sleep together, and you're at anchor for a few months. You don't see land for quite a while. You also don't see any animals.
Wow,
which was quite the adjustment. There are some opportunities where you have some owners that bring their dogs on board, which is quite cool. Also an awesome experience. But yeah, so I was there for about, the season lasted a good 6-7 months, but it was hard work. You could work 18 hours a day. I was doing 17,000 steps a day. It's physical, hard work. I thought going into that industry, I work with horses. I'm a vet rehabber. We are all naturally all strong by what we do in our profession. And yeah, I got really challenged. But
And I'm sure when those animals and dogs came onto the yacht, you were probably doing gait analysis and watching, like, is there something wrong with it? Can I treat it? I mean, that's the thing. Sometimes, I mean, when I think about going on the yachts, for me, it's like I imagined you like diving off the yacht and, having relaxing time and doing a little bit of work. But I think it's sometimes we have this sort of vision of how we think it is, and it's not exactly like that. Maybe some yachts.
We did have the opportunity. So when the owners were also even great. So in between when the guests were on board and when they left, the captain was amazing. He would let us know when the time was right, and we could like go off, use the jet skis, use the SUP paddle, the goggles. We could go snorkeling as soon as there was a moment, or just plain swimming. Every day you would wake up in a brand new area. I had the opportunity we did a dinner for the guests, and we were driving the boat all around the volcano during the nighttime. It was amazing. So there was definitely beautiful moments that we were able to do, but it just, when you had those moments, you just appreciated it so much more than you actually just would in a normal daily life.
And I'm sure that you probably don't think it now, but you probably learned a lot of skills, a lot of people skills. There's a lot that you've learned, and you'll look back in a few years' time and you'll say, wow, like that was something that I did that actually upskilled me in another way, not necessarily in a vet rehab way, but with dealing with people and a whole lot of other things that you've learned there.
Absolutely. I definitely learned a lot, especially how to communicate, especially where, two nationalities where English wasn't either. Afrikaans is my first language, but for them, English, is not their language by choice. For me, it was difficult. I spent a lot of time not in isolation, but, they would communicate in French together. I would be on my side, but they did do a lot of effort on their side to try and communicate with me so that I would feel included. I learned so much about different cultures and just about communication, and just a whole nother level of what that side of what that type of industry all requires, and just a keen eye for detail. And I can just definitely incorporate it back into what I am with veterinary physiotherapy, but in my own unique way.
Yeah. So can you speak French now?
Very little. I only know the very introductory ones, but a very formal way of saying hello in French is comment allez-vous?
Okay, nice.
But there are some, I'm probably not going to try now, because anyone that might be French might not be very impressed with me or my pronunciation, because I'm a little bit out of practice now.
You sound very posh to me. So now, what are the plans going forward now? So you're obviously back now in South Africa for a few months, and you have been seeing some patients, and I know you're thinking about maybe going back to the yachts. If you go back for another year, when you come back, have you got sort of long-term plans of going back into practicing, or are you going to be employed? What is your mindset now, having done a little bit of everything?
Well, at the moment right now, being back home, it has been absolutely amazing. Just being blessed and seeing my dogs and everyone again. Me leaving after being what I was exposed to makes going back really hard. But I have had the opportunity of actually seeing patients again. I opened up my doors again, being back in South Africa. Some of my old clients contacted me as soon as they saw that, especially some of my veterinarians in the area reached out when they actually saw me at the vet practice and asked me if I please can come and help them see some of their post-surgery cases. So for me, it's been really exciting to get back into it and touch and treat a dog again, and a horse and a cat, whatever happened to me. Also had an amazing opportunity to be part of Onlinepethealth now as well. So, which is on a 3-month basis, whilst Ane is away during this time. So I'm just helping to step in and be part of Onlinepethealth, and I've absolutely been loving every moment of it and being part of your team as well. I'm also learning so much.
Well, we're loving having you on board. And we actually secretly, I mean, that was a bit of a loaded question because I'm actually secretly hoping that Nadia is going to stay.
I wasn't sure.
So yeah, so I know that you have, you're not really sure what your plans are. Is there long-term plans for a practice? I mean, is that something that you wish for, to open up a practice, like a brick and mortar practice, or do you think you'll just carry on like treating as a mobile vet rehabber?
So right now being mobile, I think also why I've always remained mobile and being in different areas is actually it's also because honestly, I have actually been a little bit afraid of basing myself because I still don't really know where I actually want to base myself yet. So remaining mobile and having the options of locuming has really benefited me in that way. But yes, long-term plans, I would like to base myself somewhere. The region for me is still unknown at this point in time, but how things are looking, it might be Ballito in South Africa, but nothing has been set in stone as of yet. But long-term practice, yes, I do want to return to veterinary physiotherapy and be involved with equine and canine. I would love to even still be involved online and locum. Everything is just working out so great for me, as I am also looking forward towards is having a home for myself. I don't know if this might be to anyone else out there, but I am a single vet rehabber and I am in my 30s now, and for me, I really one day want to have my own home, and this is something that I'm working towards. So for me, a big deal for if I would return back to the yachts or anything like that would be to support to having in something like that, as well as paying back some of my high-end loans. But for now, I'm really happy where I am and being back at home. But there is still the possibility to go overseas again, yes.
Yeah. So the great thing, Naz, is you've got so many doors open right now, and you're not young enough. So I know you say you're in your 30s, but you're still young, and you've got you've got so many options to you, which is absolutely wonderful. So Naz, if there was one piece of advice that you could give vet rehabbers who had just qualified, what would it be?
It would be because I know how you feel. I know because I also felt like that. Qualifying and looking for your first job opportunity is going to be scary. But what I can tell you is that you need to put yourself out there and to try all the areas that you think possible. And what I can also say is to start already creating a great relationship with your fellow vet rehabbers out there, because you never know where you are going to be in a few years down the line from now. Because at the end, maybe that fellow vet rehabber one day will have their own practice, and you might still be mobile and you might still need those extra hours one day. And you can reach out to them. It's so wide of the opportunities that you could actually create for yourself. But I really do feel that even starting off is to start building and maintaining your relationships with your fellow vet rehabbers.
I love it. Networking is so, so important. Naz, it's been so lovely chatting to you, and thank you so much for sharing your journey. I'm looking forward to following and obviously secretly hoping that you're going to be staying and not returning to the yachts. But whatever you do, best of luck. And yeah, we're looking forward to watching you grow and all the different things that are going to be happening in your vet rehabber life.
Thank you so much, Meg, and thank you so much for having me here. It was really a great opportunity.
Thanks, Naz. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye. If you enjoyed this podcast, please hit the subscribe button so you get notified every time I load a new podcast. And please, if you get a moment, head over to Stitcher or iTunes and leave me a review. It's a really lonely job being a podcaster, and so the only time I get to hear from you or know that you're out there is when I get a review. And know that I read every single one of your reviews. So to those of you that have left reviews, I want to say a very, very big thank you. Every time we get a review, it really helps to get the Veterinary Rehabilitation Podcast out there to all the vet rehabbers all over the world. Alright, vet rehabbers, so if you are looking for more continuing education in the field of veterinary rehabilitation, head over to onlinepethealth.com. Go be awesome, guys.